This
Agenda.
conference will now be recorded.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the January 26, 2021 Tenino City Council meeting work session. We've got a few items on the agenda: committee commission appointments, playground equipment update, temp clerk treasurer Scott Garrison, and then building code enforcement or building code. So we can start with committee commission assignments. So we should have either Rana or Jen should be able to scroll down to the list of committee commission assignments.
Mine's easy, just where I'm at.
Scrolling.
I am not seeing what you're looking for, sir.
Okay, it's a spreadsheet that lists all the committee assignments and who's assigned to what committee. Rana and I went over it the other day.
I don't see it in here.
Okay. Then we
Rana said just 1 second.
okay.
Sorry.
We've suggested no changes other than we've added Cutter to TRPC, Solid Waste Advisory Board, and we've added myself to the EMS Council and EDC. And I think, well, and then, you know, Chief Lougheed stepped into her committee assignments.
How about Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee, Cutter has volunteered to be part of the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
So we'll just keep moving on. But we want to get that in your hands so that you guys can adopt that. Playground equipment. So I'm sure that you're all aware that during one of the recent storms, a tree fell on, like, directly smack dab on the playground equipment in the park and just completely destroyed everything. So we have submitted a claim to the insurance company, and we're going to see how much we can get for replacement. We also, we're going to talk to them about seeing if we can get a little more so we can move it. We need to move it, and when we redo it, we can't just redo it the way it is. The soft fall, the wood chips, those are no longer really acceptable in the playground world. So we're going to have to redo it, and we're going to have to redo it in a way where it's accessible to, you know, people of all abilities. You know, kids in wheelchairs and things like that need to be able to get into the playground equipment. And we need to make sure that there's drainage. If you look at our playground equipment, probably 6 months out of the year, it's got 6 inches of water standing around it. So we're going to see how much we'll get from the insurance company. We're also going to do a capital budget request from the legislature for enough funds to be able to redo it and redo it right. I've already spoke to Peter Barno, who's our new 20th district rep, and he is the vice chair of the capital budget committee. And we're going through the paperwork to submit a request for funds to build a significant new playground. So it's too bad that stuff was trashed, but I think we got a chance of making some big improvements. So we're gonna do our best to do that. Any questions or thoughts? Everybody okay with that plan? Yeah,
yes.
We already have the plans and the narrative and everything built out. That we're essentially going to use the plan that we built with Mr. Droll for the RCO grant that we asked for, and we were looking for about $500,000, and we would essentially just be using that same plan. So everything's already done. The groundwork's already done, so it makes it really easy, and we can use that insurance money and kind of call that match. We can, not that match is required, but it helps sweeten the pot when you're asking the state for money. So I think we're in a good position for that. Temporary clerk treasurer, Mr. Scott Garrison, would you like to introduce yourself to the council? I see Scott's on there. Scott? If you're there and you're trying to figure it out, there's a mic icon somewhere on your screen. If you hit mic on, it'll allow you to talk. So when you get that figured out, we'll come
Okay,
back to you.
I'm on.
Oh, there we go.
Hello, everybody.
Everyone says hello. Their mics are off too.
Okay.
Hi,
I
Scott.
don't know which one.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Scott.
So if anybody has any questions for Scott, he's making himself available tonight. I don't know if you want to give any kind of insight or thoughts or introduce anything that you I don't know. I just thought it'd be a good opportunity for the council to see it face to face, since they probably haven't all been into the office. But these meeting things are weird, so it's hard to have like a real conversation.
Yes, I think I'll just sort of update on what I've been doing. I've been making sure that the fourth quarter reports that needed to be filed by the end of January are all done. I think we have one more to do tomorrow, and then we're caught up, so we won't be late on any of that. And then it's really figuring out where things are at so that we can figure out how to move forward. Part of the problem is just figuring out the filing system and where information's at on the computer and in the office. Nobody seems to know, so we're struggling a little bit with that, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, apparently the filing system that John implemented is a language that only John really understood. So it's like traveling into his brain when you want to get into the files, and it's a complex network apparently. So we'll muddy through that. Judy just wants to revamp everything and do it all over. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I imagine once we get we're thinking once we hire a permanent clerk treasurer, that person may have their own system they want to implement. So it may not. We don't want to go too far into revamping anything without being very purposeful. All right, any questions for Scott? John? You're our question guy.
Nope,
Okay.
not today. Not
Okay,
yet.
excellent. So Ben Barnes, our building code official and code enforcement individual, he has turned in his letter of intent to retire. So if you, I'm sure you're all aware, Ben retired from the city of Olympia as a building code official, and then he came down to us and he works for us part-time, and he works for Rainier and he works for Bucota. And so he wants to go into full retirement, and he wants to hit the road and travel through Montana and places like that. So he has given us, he said till the end of the month, but he said he will also stick around until we come up with a plan. So it may be a few more weeks than that. Bucota, Rainier, and I have met with one individual that is more than qualified to do the job. His name is LG Nelson. And he has done this for a long time. He works for a firm, I believe it's PTI out of Chehalis, that provides building departments for smaller cities and things like that. He is putting together a proposal for us. I'm also gonna speak to another individual, and if we were to go with LG Nelson, it's, Ben has been giving us the best deal we could ever imagine, because it's very convenient for him. So costs are going to change. There were two proposals from Mr. Nelson. One, that he charge a flat rate of $85 an hour for any of the work he does. and the other would be that he does a 50-50 split of building permits and plan reviews. And both of those are considerably more expensive than we are currently paying. But so what I am toying with the idea of, and I think this may be the direction we go, is we have slated a position with Public Works to hire, and we could hire an individual that has some experience in the building trade. And Mr. Nelson, LG Nelson, has said that he would work with us to train and certify somebody as a permit technician. So the way that these building code certifications, the bottom rung is permit technician, then it goes building inspector, then it goes plans review person, and then like doctor of buildings. So we could have somebody pretty quickly able to process a lot of the permits, and that would allow us to keep things and keep the revenue in-house and keep the expertise in-house. And as we move forward with that individual and get their training up, there would be less and less that we would have to farm out to Mr. Nelson. And I think we may want to, no matter what, have him as a backup, because we're not likely to have somebody in-house that can do like high-level commercial plan review and things like that. So we may get into a scenario where that firm, we use them like we would the attorney. You know, there's some stuff that we can figure out on our own and we can interpret on our own, but when we need something really vetted and signed off, we would farm it out. So that may be the scenario that we're going towards. We're looking over different job descriptions, and we're going to see about merging like a permit tech / maintenance worker position into one, and that's what we would focus on hiring. Any questions?
So Wayne, while he's training, so if we went with this option of him training somebody, is he still asking for the same 85 an hour while he's training?
He's been very, good question. He's been very like adamant that like calls and, you know, consultation, things like that wouldn't be at a cost. So there may be some initial like upfront stuff where he comes down and does a class or runs them through some stuff, you know, does some, you know, goes over how to do an inspection for a roof permit, or what things to look for that would have costs. But over time, those would be less and less. But yes, kind of. But the $85, so I don't envision us signing up for the $85 an hour option. I would envision us signing up for the 50-50 permit split cost. And if we do that, he says that he would charge us $55 an hour for things outside of the permit stuff. And that would mostly be finishing up the work that Ben has already started. So all the houses where Doug Bloom has built out on Briar Lane in Hidden Meadows, those permits have already been paid for. All that stuff's been paid for. So there's no 50-50 to split. But most of the work is done. You know, at this point, there's really little bit we have to do, except, you know, when something has to get signed off, it signs off. But this guy, you know, this guy wouldn't really have, there's no brain work in it. So he would finish up Ben's work at 55 an hour if we sign on to the permit 50-50 split. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions, comments, concerns regarding the concept for the permit tech thing? Okay. There's some other things that we're kind of thinking of, you know, but it's kind of a little too early to put it out there. But this is the likely scenario we're going at this point. I'm going to try and talk to another individual that is also a licensed engineer that may be able to do more than just the building side of things. May be able to provide other services as well. and we put out a lot of money for planning. We put out a lot of money for engineering, and so we may be looking at some other things. Bucota ILA. So if you look in your packet, it was added just recently, but Bucota's water distribution, they have to have a WDM, a water distribution manager. Somebody has to be certified to overlook their water system. That person recently left their employment, so they have no WDM, and they have come to us and asked if we would hire out our WDM to them on an occasional basis, maybe like once a week for a couple hours. There's an ILA in there that considers that. This is prior to the suggestions. So if you look at it, this is prior to the suggestions that the attorney has made for changes. The attorney said back to me, paragraph 3, he would want to say Tenino can only terminate for cause. Paragraph 4, he would want to add that Tenino's liability for Bucota's excess contract costs needs to be limited. He suggests the liability extend no more than 60 days. Paragraph 5, make clear Bucota mayor may have contact with Tenino's employee, but only Tenino may direct its employee's work. Paragraph 6, Tenino's indemnity obligation needs to be limited to its proportional share of liability. Bucota should defend and indemnify Tenino for any claims arising out of its conduct under the agreement on a proportional basis. So with those changes, those suggested changes added, I have kicked that back to Bucota to ask them to make those changes. If we sign on to that agreement tonight, then we would be able to hire out one of our public works employees, and I think it was like $60 an hour. That person would go down there and they're able to sign off on Bucota's water system. I've also kicked around the idea of having a bigger agreement where we could provide more services through our public works department to Bucota, and we're still talking that out. And I think it would be a good, it could be a good relationship. They're not in a position to have a robust public works department, but they have needs, and we could help provide them, and they could pay for it, and it'll help kind of offset costs. And also, it seems like a good scenario. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding that ILA?
Well, I'm thinking we need to, I don't see the language of the ILA. I don't see the language that the attorney suggested.
It's not in there yet because he sent that to me
Okay.
after this was posted. So if you guys do consider adopting or passing the ILA, you could make a motion that says pass it with the attorney's, pass it with the attorney's
Okay.
suggestions.
All right.
incorporated.
All right.
We have already, because their WDM left like 2-3 weeks ago, Brent has already been helping them a little bit because they have to have, the Department of Ecology would be finding them by the day if that wasn't happening. But if you guys aren't comfortable with this, then they've got to go a different direction. But I don't see a problem with that. Troy doesn't see a problem with this. And like I said, I would like to use this as an opportunity to work closer with them and help, share services, and, but they would be paying for it. So.
Well, I think that we need to do that with the two smaller towns around us, definitely.
Yeah. Even the permit tech thing. So they are likely signing on with that LG Nelson as well. And as we bring somebody into our employment that becomes trained, we would, and they've already said that they would agree to this, they would use our employee at a lesser rate. So that LG individual, Rainier, wants to do it by the hour because they got into some weird situation with a previous building official that was doing a cost sharing agreement. It was different than this, and it got wonky for different reasons. But they would be signing on at $85 an hour. And if we had this permit tech in our employment, we could hire them out at, say, like $55 an hour and save Rainier money. So I think there's opportunity there. Questions, comments, concerns? A lot of people in the meeting tonight. Okay. I have nothing else on the work session. Is there anything you guys would like to talk about? Otherwise, I'll invite the police chief to provide her report. If she's here, I can't tell who anybody is.
Make it so.
Okay.
I don't see her on here.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then let us. I have nothing else for the work session. We could take a 10-minute break, or we could play Go Fish. All right. I will see you all back at 7:30.
This conference will now be recorded.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back and welcome to the January 26, 2021 Tenino City Council meeting. Let the record show that all city council members are present. Please stand for the flag salute. Allegiance to the
Pledge
flag
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and justice for all.
All right. We have an agenda before us needing approval.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to the minutes.
No
The
approval.
January 12th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the January 12th meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to the consent calendar.
No
We
approval.
have a consent calendar consisting of January 13th, 2021 through January 26th, 2021 payroll EFTs in the amount of $17,831.64. Claims checks number 29637 through 29668 and EFTs in the amount of $52,046.83 for a grand total of $69,878.47 with no liquor or cannabis license applications or renewals. We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to executive session. None. Presentations. Miss Susan Dale Esty, Executive Director of the Washington Economic Development Association, is joined by Miss Candace Bach, Director of Government Relations for the AWC. They will present information on tax increment financing. And Jen, if you would give them the controls. Hey, Michael.
Mayor.
All righty. I believe Michael Cade was going to make a few remarks, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, to start.
Oh, the floor is yours.
Okay, I really appreciate being here with you tonight and appreciate Candace joining us in the middle of session and really appreciate all of your service here in the evening. I'm focused on, the good of the public. Just very grateful. So we are planning to talk briefly about tax increment financing. We were asked to come share a bit and answer your questions, and I look forward to that. Michael Cade, who I think you all know, the Executive Director of the Thurston Economic Development Council, is on the WIDA board and knows your community probably certainly better than me, better than most economic developers. So Michael, take it away, and then Candace and I look forward to sharing a bit.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne, and good to see you again, Candace. Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening about tax increment financing. This is a tool that I'm sure that you'll be interested in understanding a little bit more about. I'm honored to be teeing this up for Suzanne. I'm a proud member of the board of the Washington Economic Development Association, and I was kind of mentioned to Suzanne, I'd like to introduce her. And the only way I could really do that is to kind of present to you the notion of how we relate to each other. One of the things that our organization has tried to do in the last couple of years is become an economic development agency that understands the economic impacts that we have upon organizations and communities. But I need to step backwards a little bit and introduce the Washington Economic Development Association, because they impact us and our ability to work with you. The tools and resources that WEDA brings to my table and my stable of ponies and my toolbox is immeasurable. And so one of these days, Suzanne, I'm going to figure out that economic impact that you have upon the Thurston EDC, because that transfers back over to our work with communities like Tenino. So when you think about WEDA and the role that they play, think about it in terms of they are my go-to organization, that when we start developing products, thinking about strategies, about community development, these are one of the groups that we go to for guidance and support. So with that, I want to introduce Suzanne and tax increment financing. And certainly this is a project or tax increment financing that my board is strongly supportive as well. So Suzanne?
Thanks so much, Michael. Really appreciate your service. Michael doesn't know this, but I don't think, but last week at the House Community and Economic Development Committee, I pointed out Thurston Strong as a best practice for our whole state. And it really is thanks to your leadership. So thank you again, Mr. Mayor and council members. As Michael said, I'm the executive director of the Washington Economic Development Association, and WEDA is laser focused on economic development. We're really the only trade association laser focused on economic development. We've been around for 25 years, but just in the last couple of years, as Michael said, we've upped our game dramatically, and it's with the support of great people like him. WEDA has 3 top priorities in our economic recovery legislative agenda, and they are strengthening the economic development ecosystem, fostering catalysts for job recovery and growth, and increasing prosperity for all of Washington, and that includes communities like Tenino. The topic we're going to talk about tonight is really a crucial catalyst for job recovery and growth. And we are helping coordinate the TIF for Jobs Coalition, which is a growing and diverse statewide group of now 34 public and private sector organizations. I counted tonight, there are 10 cities, so we have many more to join the coalition, but AWC representing all cities has been just tremendous for many years on this issue. These organizations, and you can see there on the slide, the 4 primary organizations, kind of the leading entities, if you will, are the Association of Washington Cities, the Washington Public Ports Association, WEDA, and then NAIOP, representing the private development community. So these organizations and all of those who've endorsed us, and quite frankly, I think there's a bunch who just haven't sent us their logos, strongly support 2 bills that are in front of the legislature now, Senate Bill 5211 and its companion, House Bill 1189. The Senate bill was heard last week in the Senate Business Services Committee, and the House bill was heard today in House Finance. And I'll just say briefly, and then Candace is going to talk about the tool, because it's rather wonky, it's very technical, and Candace is a tremendous pro, so we're lucky to have her with us tonight. I'll just say briefly that you all know your community well. You know what's happening around the state and the nation. Obviously, we've had a historic economic recession provoked by COVID-19. Communities are devastated, businesses are devastated, and families are devastated. And we need tools. So that's why this is a high priority in our agenda, and resources to recover. So our position is that authorizing TIF is one critical action the legislature can take this session to help communities across the whole state recover, to grow construction jobs, because there'd be a short-term construction job gain, and also catalyze the growth of additional jobs, to spark reinvestment or investment, particularly in some of the more challenging sites. And I was the economic development director at the city of Renton. So Renton has used kind of a mini form of TIF to build infrastructure that then grows jobs and to foster vibrant communities. The coalition has worked really hard to develop a useful tool for local governments that meets the constitutional requirements, and Candace will talk more about this, is accountable, and make sure that you can choose the best approach for your community if you choose to use TIF. It's a proven economic development tool that has worked effectively in 48 states around the country. So quite frankly, we're at a competitive, weaker position by not having this tool. Having the tool allows local governments to make public investments in targeted areas. So you would invest in infrastructure, and Candace will elaborate on this, to spur private development and then spark this job growth. So I think with that, I'll go to the next slide. Candace, we just have 4 slides. We want to make sure we are able to answer all of your questions, and I'll let Candace take it away.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you, Mayor, for inviting us here this evening, and to the City Council members. You know that AWC is your advocate in Olympia, and we've worked on tax increment financing for a while, but this year with this coalition and with the partnership that WIDA brings together, it feels a little bit different. It feels like there's a lot more momentum going into this, and I might not have guessed that given the craziness of this session, the fact that it's being held virtually. So we're very pleased to see this partnership happening, and these bills being introduced and moving, and appreciate Tenino's interest in this topic. So a little bit about tax increment financing. It is a bit wonky, as Suzanne said, and what it really boils down to is it's the ability to invest in public infrastructure to support private development. And you all know that you don't have enough funds to build new public infrastructure, right? That's always one of the big things we hear from cities, is we just don't have the money that's necessary to invest in, build infrastructure. And there's a desire for growth to pay for growth. So under tax increment financing, what you're trying to do is you're trying to capture the increased assessed value and increased tax revenue that's generated from that private development, and use it to pay for that public infrastructure that you had to invest in to generate the private development. So it's that sounds, I don't know if that sounds simple or not, but that's kind of the simple concept, is that the development's increasing the tax revenue, and that tax revenue is being used to pay back the infrastructure investment. In Washington, that's even more complicated because of our state constitution and our state tax structure. So TIF was actually adopted in Washington in 1982 under the Community Development Refinancing Act. Unfortunately, it was found unconstitutional in the mid-90s because of concerns over uniformity in taxing and the use of the tax revenues. There's been a few attempts to pass a constitutional amendment to update our constitution so that we can do TIF. Those have not passed, and it was last tried in the mid-80s. Last year, we tried to get the legislature to send it to the voters again without getting a lot of traction. As you can imagine, a constitutional amendment's a pretty high bar. It requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature. So given that history, Washington has used some alternatives to TIF that are kind of TIF light or TIF-like, but without really getting there. And none of those programs, well, LIFT and LIRF, the local infrastructure financing tool, and the local revitalization funding program, were both state sales tax credit programs that are closed to new projects. So that's not really an option at this point for anyone. We've tried to get the legislature to reopen those projects and refund them, but as you can imagine, they're not anxious to spend general fund dollars in that way. So we are making another pitch for tax increment financing that's based on property taxes, and that can really take advantage of, again, the increase in assessed value and that the private development brings, and reinvesting that in the public infrastructure. So one of the challenges that, again, we run into because of our state tax structure is the 1% cap and how that interacts with collecting that additional revenue associated with that increased assessed value. As you all are probably very aware, with our budget-based system, after new construction, that increased assessed value just kind of blends into your tax base, and you don't really get that that tangible bump that you're able to capture those revenues. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we've crafted the bill this year to try and address those issues. But we think that we've got language in the bill that can get us around both the constitutional issues and address those technical issues around capturing that increased assessed value. Suzanne, do you want to go ahead and go on to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. I'm just not quite as adept at GoToMeeting, but I am figuring this out. There we go. And can you all see, or are you seeing yourselves? I tried to close out the presenters. Can you see the whole slide?
I can.
Okay, then maybe we're good. Sorry, go ahead.
Are you doing this slide, Suzanne, or am I?
Did it not go?
No, it did go.
This is you.
Okay, sorry. We rehearsed this ahead of time, clearly. Sorry, Suzanne. So again, we've tried to craft this proposal in a way that addresses a number of concerns we've heard over the years from legislators, from other stakeholders. And again, what we're proposing here is giving the agency, the sponsoring jurisdiction that forms the TIF, the ability to capture all of the increased tax revenue that's generated by that increased assessed value to use it to pay back any infrastructure investment. And so that actually means capturing other local taxing districts' tax revenue from that area. And the rationale is they wouldn't have seen that increased assessed value and that increased tax revenue, but for the infrastructure investment caused by the TIF. And so that's the rationale for capturing that tax revenue from some of those other local taxing jurisdictions. So it's definitely, it's a sharing effort. It's something where you're going to need buy-in from that larger community and those other taxing districts. But one of the things it doesn't do is it doesn't impact the state's property tax rate or revenue. As you'll recall, the state's property tax revenue is dedicated to school funding, and that's the constitutional protection issues that we've run into. So we are leaving the state out of this equation. While we'd love to see the state share help with the project and the investment, it just doesn't work from that kind of constitutional issue. And it makes legislative budget writers very uncomfortable. Another thing we're doing is stipulating that the funding can only be used to pay for publicly owned infrastructure. In other states, they've been criticized because some of that funding may go to the private development itself, and it's seen as just a subsidy, a gift to the private sector project. In Washington, what we're proposing is it can only be used to pay for that publicly owned infrastructure. We are requiring that there would be a study and mitigation requirements for any impacts on local business and affordable housing. There's sometimes critiques about gentrification or just pushing out local small businesses in favor of some kind of big project. So we want to make sure that that's addressed. It does protect current taxing districts' authority and existing tax collections. I mentioned that we would be taking that increase in tax collections from those other districts, but essentially holding them harmless as if the development itself never happened for that 25-year life of the bonds that would be paying back for the public infrastructure. And I think most importantly is it requires that the sponsoring jurisdiction have a finding that the development would not occur if not for the funding of the public infrastructure. We call this the but-for argument. It wouldn't have happened but for this, because one of the criticisms is the development would have happened anyhow. It just, you didn't need to do this, the development would have happened. So this is really just a handout. And so this is intended to be used for that kind of extraordinary project where it wouldn't have happened without this kind of investment, or at least it wouldn't have happened in a reasonable amount of time. Sure, and maybe, 20, 30 years it might have happened, but this is necessary to get it going right now. Suzanne, do you want to go ahead and move to the next slide?
Yep, just takes me a second. So this is our final slide. We have a web page on WIDA's website, which is widaonline.org, and that's where you'll see our whole legislative agenda. And on that web page is a one-pager that Candace has also worked very hard on. There's a frequently asked questions document that we will be updating as we hear questions from stakeholders and legislators through the session. There's a couple different videos, so if you really feel like getting wonky and want to learn more about TIF, you can watch a couple different videos. There's a very good one created by our partners in the Tri-Cities, and that talks about some real examples of how they've used this mini form of TIF, if you will. So really, Mr. Mayor, we don't have a lot more to share other than if you'd like to get involved, certainly your support for the Thurston Economic Development Council is tremendously valued. And by the nature of being part of the EDC, you'll be hearing about this from Michael and others from his team. And then if you'd like to sign on, we just need a copy of your logo to add to the website. If you look on that page, there's a TIF for Jobs page on our website. You'll see all the different organizations that are joining forces with us to try to finally get this tool this session. It's not going to be an easy lift. Both hearings have gone well, but it is very, very complicated and there's multiple taxing jurisdictions involved. So it's not going to be an easy road to the governor's desk, but we're really hopeful that with the strong coalition that we have, the communications tools we're using, and we're also using an advocacy email machine, if you will, and you're welcome to get involved at that level. And then just the economic imperative that we need tools right now. We're really hopeful that we can get this done this session. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions whatsoever.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Candace or Susan or Michael?
Okay, you guys keep talking about, this is the second time I've heard this presentation, and you keep talking about timeline for recovery, but you don't give a timeline. What do you mean by that?
Timeline in the big picture of economic recovery?
Mm-hmm. What exactly do you mean by that? What is your benchmarks for timeline recovery? Because
well, that's a very
benchmark.
good question. And I think it will vary on each region of, our state. Michael probably has a perspective from the regional perspective in the community. If you look at unemployment alone, if that was one metric you were looking at, there are multiple counties in our state with double-digit unemployment rates. And we know that that metric doesn't measure the people that aren't currently looking for work. So it's hard right now because there's this, what I call the paradox of Main Street versus Wall Street. Wall Street's doing quite well. So if you just solely measured on some of the kind of macroeconomic metrics, you wouldn't truly be able to tell what's happening with small businesses who have just been devastated. As I'm sure you all can name a restaurant that is struggling, or a hospitality oriented business that has been boarded up or closed up. So the small business growth is one metric I'm very, very focused on. that we can get back to a place where our main streets are healthy again. I know that's kind of a roundabout question, but those are the metrics I have my eye on. Michael, do you want to answer any further?
Well, as John knows, as Councilmember O'Callahan knows, we measure the same things. We measure job growth. And Thurston County is a unique situation where 95% of most of our businesses are 5 or 10 employees or less. So we look at that job retention, the job expansion at that micro level. So we get down into the granular data as to which jobs and which businesses are expanding. We also know that in certain areas of our region that we have different sectors that are very, very vibrant. We've had long chats with the council about the ag-based economy, not necessarily just being growers, producers, but also the distributors, packagers, and a variety of things. So, John, it's a really good question you've asked, and so you need to start thinking in terms of how are you recovering your community based upon what you have. We know that you'll have a set of tools from us, how we look at the granular data of job growth, job retention, based on that closely held businesses. One of the things that we put together is that entrepreneurial ecosystem in Thurston County, so that we know if somebody enters that system, we know where they get spun off to employers, they would know where they get spun off for financing, as well as for new markets. So, you know, if you have a little bit more specifics about something, then more than glad. But yeah, there's a number of metrics that we can go after as well. So.
Okay, then how is this money? Because it sounds to me this is for growth paying for itself. Am I correct? So how is that going to help? Let's be really specific and say the Sandstone Cafe, which has been there for what, 7 years now? Or is it more than that? How would this money specifically help them? Because that's where job growth would be, is in those kind of places. So I'm not seeing the coalition between the two. We can move on that one because that's a very complicated situation. This has been brought up to the state several different times and even shot down by citizens. And I don't remember the date on many different times, specifically because it circumvents and does things against the state constitution. What I'm hearing in this, and again, this is my second time, is your wordsmithing to yet again go around the state constitution, but I am not seeing anything different except wordsmithing. So why is it better this time than it has been in the past? I understand that jurisdictions all over the state are hurting for money, but that's a common thing throughout the United States. And I can say this because I travel quite a bit. But how is this going to not circumvent the state constitution because you're just doing some wordsmithing?
So, you know, I'm not gonna answer, but I want to go back a little bit. That's a little bit unfair for Candace or Suzanne to address the notion of how this will impact Sandstone Cafe, because you know they don't, you know, they're not real aware. I mean, that's an institution in your community, and so if you start thinking about the volume of traffic that they're dependent upon, it's retail, John, is that they need to have retail people that come in and patronize it, and what drives that is activity, economic activity. It's not necessarily the old saw of rising tide lifts all boats, but let's say you have a district that generates income, investment, and activity. That will drive investment into the Sandstone Cafe. It's tough to say right now what that number will be, but you have to realize that economic activity does beget economic activity, and we can find those multipliers for you. But how it relates to the other thing, I'm going to defer to Candace and
Well, and I'll turn to Candace on the constitutional front, council member, but I will just say that this is one piece of significant economic development work that we're working on right now. We are working around the clock right now to get the word out and to provide technical assistance on the Paycheck Protection Program. There are $284 billion in forgivable loans available right now. Washington's share should be about $6 billion. And as of a report from the Small Business Administration today, we haven't even reached $1 billion for Washington State yet. So I'm hopeful that the small businesses in your community are listening to the Thurston Strong campaign and are reaching out to the multitude of services that are provided through that effort. And I tell you, the way you all work together in your region is second to none. You know, leveraging the Small Business Development Center, there are a slew of webinars. And if the PPP doesn't work for a small business, There are other debt relief tools that a small business can be leveraging right now. And then as of last Friday, and it passed or it was considered in House Appropriations this afternoon, the state has yet another round of emergency grants available. So I want to be clear that this is just one piece of an economic recovery puzzle, this TIF tool. And we are working, believe me, we are working our tails off to help the small businesses, more so than, quite frankly, we have in the past in economic development. I think we knew that restaurants, and I'm looking forward to patronizing that place someday soon, but I think we knew that they were the heart of our cities. But it is a rude awakening for all of us when we see them boarded up. So we're working exceedingly hard to try to get these resources out there, and we need your help. But back to TIF, Candace, I do think we'd like to, we're happy to reiterate the constitutional answer. It's a lot more than wordsmithing. We've been working very hard with bright lawyers to try to get this right.
Yeah, thank you. It is, it is complicated. It's maybe complicated wordsmithing, but the key, I think, here is to keep in mind that TIF doesn't work for every project. It's not a solution for every economic development need. It's a local option when that makes sense. Constitutionally, what we're trying to do here to address those previous constitutional concerns is remove the state from that equation. The state's property tax that's dedicated to schools is one component of that. Uniformity in taxing means that the tax rate remains the same and each property is taxed the same way. And so we've crafted the words very carefully to make sure that that indeed is the case and that there is still uniformity in taxing under this proposal. So it's maybe glorified wordsmithing with constitutional attorneys, bond counsel, and others to make sure we get it right. It's not any kind of sleight of hand to try to make it sound like we're doing it. We're really intending to create a constitutionally valid tool.
Thank you. Michael, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the presenters? Imagine Linda, our legislative liaison, will be keeping track of this and keep us informed.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you again.
Yep,
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Candace. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That brings us to the public comment period. If there's anyone in the public that would like to provide comment, please step forward and do so at this time. You'll be given 3 minutes. State your name and your address. Again, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to provide public comment, going once, going twice, moving on. We have no public hearings and we have no proclamations. Keep moving along on the agenda there. Under new business, Mayor Fournier is asking the council to approve a contract for the public works to be able to help, and it's not a contract, it's an interlocal agreement with Bucota that would allow public works to help with their water system. So we have an ILA presented. I have stated and read the changes that the attorney has suggested. What I would ask is that council authorize the mayor to sign the ILA so long as the attorney's suggestions are incorporated. I have kicked that ILA back to Bucota and asked Bucota to go to their attorney and have their attorney incorporate those new suggestions. When that comes back, if council would authorize me, I would sign the ILA and then we'd be off to the races.
Move approval with the suggested changes by the lawyer.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the ILA, incorporating the attorney's suggestions. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to know when the lawyer gets back to us with the changes to this instead of just signing it right away. I'd like to at least take a quick look at it.
Okay. So, okay, so I've read the changes. When Bucota sends it back, so long as those changes have been incorporated, I'll have that completed ILA and I can email that to you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. I just want to take a quick look at it, make sure that what we see today with the lawyers and that it actually gets put in there.
Awesome. Okay, sounds good. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those
I,
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We have no other new business, no resolutions, no ordinances. That brings us to reports. If you would scroll down.
I sent you guys the aftermarket report, after meeting report for Transportation Policy Board.
Saw
So
that.
that's my report.
You had it there for, oh, you did it. There we go. Wow.
Rana said sorry.
Okay, well, Tenino Community Service Center is not present. Library, museum, library. The library met with Troy today. They are going. We've given them authorization to install a card lock key system for the library that's going to allow for more use by the public. So if you'll be able to apply to get basically the key to the building. And you'll have a card, you'll swipe it, you can go in all hours of the day and use the computers and whatnot. This is a program that they started doing in McCleary and have had some success. They feel that Tenino is a place that would be good for this program. So we've given them authorization to do that. Then there'll be cameras and stuff like that installed, so they'll know when people are there, what they're doing. Other than that, things at the library seem to be going well. EDC has its first board meeting tomorrow. No report. VCB, George, have you heard anything from the VCB? George is asleep. Library, museum, is there a report there?
I don't have any report.
Okay. Civil Service Commission facade improvement. Keep going down there, Jennifer. Finance Committee, Planning Commission, Public Safety, Chief of Police. There's George. Director of Public Works, no report. City Planner, Building Official, we talked about that. City Attorney, Clerk Treasurer, you met the interim Clerk Treasurer this evening. I have no report. Well, actually, I can talk. We met with wastewater services yesterday. Kelly Wynn, the contractor, the company we contract with to run the wastewater treatment plant, met with them yesterday. There was a little kind of miscommunication. So they had an employee that resigned, and this resignation caused a little bit of friction with us between wastewater services and Tenino, because the employee told wastewater services that they didn't want to work with Tenino anymore, so they were quitting because of Tenino. And then the employee told us that they didn't want to work with wastewater services anymore. So we kind of got together and we shared emails, and we all kind of like, oh, well, now we understand why things are a little wonky. And so we've kind of rebuilt that bridge, and we've got a way forward. Troy is going to start doing monthly meetings with their staff, and because we're gonna have to communicate a whole lot more as we bring on the septic receiving station, and we start doing that. It's just gonna add more complexity to the whole plant. We took Kelly out and Brian out to show them our septic receiving station. They were very impressed. They said it's nicer than what they have in LaConner, and they were kind of a little jealous. So it seems to be that we're moving in the right direction there. We talked about more sludge removal. We talked about dewatering. We talked about what to do with the cake. We had a whole day talking about biological waste, and it was wonderful. That is my report. Be that.
Oh, they had a meeting last night, so if anybody wants the notes, just let me know and I can forward it to you or email it to you.
Okay. Solid Waste Advisory Board, Cutter.
Nothing new to report.
Okay, Steady, George.
We had a great study meeting earlier this month with all three county commissioners, and we had good reports going on from each one of the communities and what they're involved with. Next month, we're going to have a speaker, Adeline Mee's going to give an update on the Ag Business Park. It's always the third Friday of the month. Right now, we're doing them all on Zoom.
Okay. Tenino School Board, Rachel, you guys had a meeting last night. Do you have anything to report?
Yes, well, so I have a few things, but I didn't attend the last meeting, so some of this is going to be kind of old news that most of you know already. But so, as you guys know, the school is not going back for the FaceTime, and so, but they are still offering kids to come in if they're struggling or if they need extra help. So that's still available. The meals are still available. It's just as far as the district as a whole going back, it's not going to happen this year. So hopefully by next September they will. So
You just said they're not going to go back to school at all this year?
I mean, not go back as far as this school year. So hopefully September of 2021 they will.
So they can't. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
I
So
thought they
an
were moving
email,
towards a hybrid, like soon.
So an email went out saying that the school wasn't going back, that they were going to decide to still continue the in-class time and still offer the in-class time. So because school would have already been starting on the date that they had implied, they pushed it back, but then they decided that they're not going back at all. So unless that changed since I last checked, but it doesn't look like they're going back for the year.
That's not the email that we all got.
You didn't get the email for us not, that they were going to decide for us not to go back? Because we got one that said that they were going to go back in February this month, but then they were going to push it back, but then they were not going to go back at all for this school year.
Nope, never received that one. And out of all these great teachers and administrators that we have in this district, it'd be nice for them to start standing up for these students too, to get them back into school.
Well, and I think there's some confusion too, because some of the teachers have talked to some of the students and told the students that they were, but
yeah, my teacher, or my daughter's teacher, keeps saying that they are.
Yeah, but from what I have heard, they are not, but it's still a possibility. It just depends on how the vaccinations are going to go and whatever the district kind of decides with that. So I'll be surprised if they do go back, but Jason, I'll send you the email I received too, so you can see it.
Thank you. Yeah, because the only one I got saying was they canceled it for February because of the vaccines.
Yeah, they put the extension.
That makes sense because the vaccines,
they're not available to the teachers yet.
Well, not only that, but you get the vaccine, then you got to wait 4 weeks for the second one, and then it's another 2 weeks after that for it to be fully effective. So that's 6 weeks. So yeah, that does make sense that they're not going back, which is ridiculous.
And it's kind of crazy in the office right now too. So I understand like the frustration because I mean my kids as well I'm homeschooling, but right now they're transitioning. So Belmonte is retiring, as he let us all know, but June 30th is going to be his last day. So they've been doing interviews and they've actually received a lot of candidates. So they've actually narrowed it down to about 8 candidates right now. And so the good thing about that is the fact that a lot of people have applied to be the new superintendent. So
I believe Cutter is on the review board too. So.
Oh, good.
So is there, the last email that we got, there was supposed to be like a public forum in February 6th or the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Is that still happening or is that canceled too? No?
Me?
Hello?
Oh, I thought you were talking to Cutter. I'm sorry.
No.
No, as far as I know. So if you look on the website has all the updated information.
Okay.
So yeah, so what I sent you is still up to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, and you can go, and so you just have to email at least 3 days before and let them know, your questions and that what you want to say. And if it's one that you can attend and like have a voice, then just let them know everything you want to say, so that going into it, they know, okay, Jason Lawton wants to say this, and then that way too, you can kind of get some questions answered. Because I'm kind of like that too, it's like, okay, it's this, now it's that, now it's this, and I know the district is really trying their hardest to try to figure things out and go with the flow, and it's all kind of crazy with, trying to get a new superintendent in there. So the new superintendent's going to start July 1st. So when they finally narrow down to their final candidate, then that's when he'll start, he or she. But
All right.
yeah. I know, it's confusing. That's why, like, I have no report up until now, because it's like, we're going back, we're not going back. We're doing this, we're not doing this.
There's a
So,
lot going on.
right. So this is what I know for right now. If it changes, then next, obviously at our next meeting, I'll be like, actually, what I said last time, never mind.
Okay. All right. Thank you. TRPC, Cutter.
Nothing new to report. We meet next week.
Okay. TPB, John.
I could go ahead and wrap myself out. There was a presentation from the Washington State Truckers Association. The vice president was there. I challenged them on their quote unquote safety and how great their safety requirements are. But when I asked them about stuff that I particularly knew through experience, they couldn't answer. And we'll just leave it at that. But as I said earlier, I already sent you guys the after meeting report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emergency management, chief is not present. Public comment period number 2. If there's anyone that is a member of the public that would like to provide comment, now is your opportunity for the second time. Please state your name and address. You'll be given 3 minutes to comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Does anyone have any announcements they would like to make?
This time I actually do. Looking at some of the news, for example, this year they're expecting the Blue Angels to come back, which means we've got summer entertainment being planned again. If this does come about, we will resume First Responders Potluck Barbecue. It's again in September.
Excellent, thank you. All right, hearing no further announcements, we'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Non-debatable motion. You all have a great night.
You too.
Good night, everybody.